Hi, and welcome to the Budgeting for the New Year Build, Update, and Report Effectively video. As the new year is fast approaching, I'm sure budgeting and planning is top of mind for you, so we really hope this video is not only timely, but valuable as well. I'm happy to be joined by Alex Galley, who's our product education specialist, who'll be really diving deep into the Fathom product. As for me, my name's Joel Smith. I'm the product marketing manager. I'm just here to introduce the expert, that is Alex. Today, after a quick introduction of Fathom, Alex will be jumping into the common problems around budgeting and how to solve that using our Fathom product, showcasing how to build a budget using your actual data, how to create a rolling forecast, and how to wrap this all into a professional report. After the product showcase, we'll be going over some frequently asked questions around budgeting, hopefully leaving you with a valuable video at the end. So what is Fathom? Fathom is an all-in-one business performance reporting, analysis, and planning made simple. Fathom combines actionable financial insights, customizable reports, and business planning into one refreshingly easy business management solution. We do that by seamlessly integrating with leading accounting platforms such as Xero, QuickBooks, and Sage, and transform your data into insightful dashboards and reports. We're happy to say that it's easy to get started, stay connected with your financials, and get more out of your data. That's it for me. I'm going to pass it on to Alex now, who's going to go over the common problems and really showcase the Fathom product.
Thanks very much, Joel. As Joel mentioned, my name's Alex and I'm a member of the product education team here at Fathom. So I'm going to be taking you through a product demo of Fathom focusing on budgeting for the new year. So just to start with, we're going to look at some of the common problems which we hear from customers in relation to building out their budgets and their budgeting process. So the first one is that it can be time and labor intensive. So if you're using a program such as spreadsheets, sometimes this means that it can be a manual process and that can take a lot of time to create these budgets. The second one is that it can be often error prone, and that links to the first point. The third one is that it can be hard to adapt these budgets throughout the year and therefore keep them relevant. For example, if you build out your budget and then you notice that actually you're tracking a lot above the budget or maybe below in certain areas, then the budget can lose relevance and it's no longer useful. And due to the difficulties and the manualness of the budget creation, you kind of leave it and then it therefore loses relevance and usefulness. And then the fourth and final one is that the reporting output based on these budgets isn't actually that useful. It's not that insightful, and therefore you don't really see the use in creating these reports, and they can also be manual to create as well. So those are the four kind of key problem areas that I'm going to hope to address through the product demo, which I'll take you through shortly. And then in terms of what we'll be looking at within Fathom, the first area is Fathom's smart forecasting tool. So we're going to look at a few key elements within the forecasting tool, which will help you make your budgeting process easier and smarter as well. The second one is the rolling live forecast element of Fathom's forecasting tool. And then the final one is the reporting output, which you can create using your budgets. Great, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Great, so you should now be able to see my Fathom screen. So just as a brief outline for people that haven't seen Fathom before, I know that some of you might have. Within Fathom, you have a list of your companies linked, and then there are three key main areas to Fathom. So the first area is analysis, then there is reports, and then finally forecasting. Today, I'm going to be looking at both the report section and the forecast section. When you're bringing a company into Fathom, there are several integrated accounting softwares which you can use. QuickBooks, Xero, MyoB, and Sage Business Cloud are all integrated with Fathom if you want to bring in your financials from any of these. But you can also upload an Excel if your financial data isn't stored on one of these four accounting softwares. Great, so to start with, I'm going to be using this company source from Excel. So if I go across here, this is the company settings for this company. And this is basically where you want to head to get your company set up. And as you can see that the financials for this company are being sourced from Excel. And then here we have budgets. So this is where you can pull through your budget data into Fathom. If you do have budget data in a Excel outside of Fathom, you can bring that data into Fathom using a Excel import template, which you can download here, and then you can upload it to Fathom. And then that will be able to pull through to your reports. What I'm going to focus on today is pulling through creating a budget within Fathom using our smart forecasting tool. So as you can see here, it's telling me that currently I don't have a forecast set up for this company within Fathom. So I'm going to head straight to the forecast tool up here. Within Fathom, all of the areas are fully related, so you can skip between the analysis, this report section and the forecast section easily, and they all speak to each other. As you can see, I don't have a forecast set up for this company, as I mentioned, so I'm going to go ahead and click Let's Get Started. So one of the main benefits of creating your budgets actually with Fathom using the forecast tool is that the ease of getting a forecast set up straight away. The area I'm going to focus on today is the quick start forecast. So this option basically pulls up a forecast in a matter of seconds based on your past actual data, which you've imported into Fathom. If you would like, you can also use the custom forecast setup option, which basically takes you through a setup wizard, just guiding you through the forecast settings. But anything that you edit in here can still be updated from within the quick start forecast option as well. Just to note, but both options are great ways to set up your forecast and budgets. And then the final option is that if you do have a budget existing already, as I mentioned, maybe externally using Excel, you can link that budget to your forecast as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this quick start forecast option. And then, as you can see, within a matter of seconds, it has generated a whole forecast for this company based on the past actual data, which I'd imported. When you first move into the forecast section within Fathom, there is this education pop-out that comes up. If you are new to Fathom, I would really recommend going through these steps to help you learn how to use the forecasting tool. And you can also revisit it anytime down here. So just as some initial navigation for those of you that haven't seen the Fathom forecasting tool before, there are three main areas to the Fathom forecasting tool. So we've got our profit and loss, balance sheet, and cash flow up the top. So Fathom's forecast is three-way. So P&L, balance sheet, cash flow. We have our actuals, which are grayed out here in November, and then the forecast going forwards. Your forecast can extend either 3 or 5 years into the future. That's up to you how far ahead you'd like to look. And then there are sort of some other business planning tools down the side here, which I will mention later on. Great. So I'm going to go ahead and click into the first forecast month here for December. With Fathom, the main idea of how you build it out is that you first create your value rules from your profit and loss. And then this in turn will update your balance sheet. And then from that, your cash flow is generated. As I work through, you'll get more of a sense of how that works, and hopefully that will become clearer as well. So up here, I've got my value rule. And basically this is telling the profit and loss how to generate this value for this coffee revenue account moving into the future. So it's basically like your assumption. As I use the quick start forecast option, it's basically popped in this rule for me already. So it's looking at the past actuals from last month, so this figure in November, and increasing them by 3% to try and carry on the sort of trajectory that is happening in my actuals already. So the line that is not dotted is the actual data here, which I'm hovering over. And then we have the forecast data extending into the future. And that's based off of this value rule. So the quick start option can be a great way to get an idea of where your business might be progressing over the future coming year. And you can see if you think those figures line up with what you expect or what you're hoping to achieve, and if you want to keep them. If you're looking to edit them further, you can click the three dots here and go to New Rule. This will highlight just the coffee revenue line, which we're looking at now, and then you have different calculation methods. So within this drop-down, there are several methods which you can use. For example, if you, again, just want to link to a previous period, maybe you want to link to a period from last year, for example, and you can add those increases and decreases in. The two that I want to focus on first, though, are our smart prediction rules. So these are part of the smart tools that you can utilize within Fathom to make building your budgets an easier process. So the first one is a smart prediction linear regression. So basically what this means is that it's going to look at your past actual data, and you can select how many months you want it to take into account. And then basically it's going to draw a line of best fit through those months of past actual data and carry on that trend into your forecast figures. So I'm going to put it for 12 months, linear regression, press create rule. And this is what it's giving me. So I've got my past actuals, and then you can see it's a bit of a less steep incline to what it was previously, and those figures are going into the future. So this can be a really helpful way of like kind of easily processing your figures and pulling out an assumption and seeing if you think that suits for the forthcoming year. The second smart prediction tool is an average. So this one will take a rolling average of, again, the periods that you select. So if you want to extend it further to maybe 24 months, you can select that. And you can also include seasonal adjustments. So if you have a company which has a lot of seasonality, if you tick this, it will take that into account as well. And here we go. And as you can see, there is some seasonality in this business. So it is taking that into account and taking the average of the period that I selected. And this is what it is giving me for the future months. So once you've clicked Quick Start, you can go in and have a play around and see which figures you think align most for your future months. One thing to note as well, when you are updating these rules, if you click the plus here on notes, you can leave a note as to how you reach this assumption. So if, for example, you do decide to go with this rule, you can write in here why you have selected to go with that rule, and then tick include in assumptions report. That will then pull through to the report section, and you can include a table of your assumptions. So that's a great way to increase auditability of your forecast and make sure that it's clear how those assumptions were reached as well. The other thing to note as well is that obviously there, like I mentioned, there are a few other ways that you can update these value rules from the list here. If, for example, you do have a, say for the future coming year, for example, an expense such as rent, you might already know exactly what that figure will be for the whole of next year. So you'd have a couple options. So if I click into this rent line here from January 2025, and I go to new rule. So the first option is that if it's just a constant amount each month, you could just enter that straight in and press create rule. That would then overwrite those figures with what I've entered for the forthcoming future, as you can see here. The other option is that you could use drivers. So these are basically a way to include figures from outside of your financial data. So from outside of your source financial data. So if I press create, actually, if I import a driver from Excel up here, or you could create it as I just clicked on then you can click upload. And then I've already created an Excel with my driver figures, but you can download a template here and enter in the figures, press import drivers. And we can see here that the figures here are extending into the future. So this is just a case of, for example, if you have those figures already mapped out for one line, but they're a bit more variable than just a constant figure or growing with a percentage increase. So it's easier just to bring them in. Then you can bring them in like so. Head back to your profit and loss. Find the expense line. And then I can go to new rule. So I'm going to overwrite the one that was in there previously. Actually, I'm going to do it from January. And then from the drop down, I'm going to select formula/drivers, add variable, drivers, rent, this month, so it's referencing the figure in that driver tab, which we just looked at, create rule. And then you will see that it's pulled through those figures that I've just uploaded there. As you can imagine, there's actually quite a lot that you can do with this formula driver option. So if you were looking to bring in other figures from outside your source financial accounting software or your Excel import of your financials, you can build out a formula referencing those figures as long as they're imported in that driver tab. Great. And the second half of basically the forecasting within Fathom is our timing profiles. So I'm going to go back up to this coffee revenue line, and you can see here that this is our timing profile. So at the moment, this timing profile is telling Fathom that the 119,743 in December, so the forecasted figure for December, is all being collected in that same month. So basically what these timing profiles are is a link between the profit and loss and the balance sheet. So if I go to new profile, because actually we are expecting 50% of this total in the same month and 50% in the following month, I can press create profile. And now if I click the three dots here and go to preview, you can see the impact of this timing profile. So here we have of this total projected for December, 50% is going to the cash account in December, and then the rest is being moved to debtors. And then in January, the amount is being moved out of debtors and into the current account. So this is updating your balance sheet for you. So it's basically a link between the P&L and the balance sheet, and it's updating the balance sheet for you, therefore removing errors, potential errors, and also saving you time in configuring this as well. From that, it is also in turn updating your cash flow. So from your basically from a combination of your value rules, your timing profiles, you will then have your cash flow produced for your forecasted figures. So that's the third kind of smart tool that I wanted to highlight within Fathom's forecasting, which can make it easier for you to set up your budgets for the forthcoming year. And again, on these, you can leave notes as well, as I highlighted previously. Once you're happy with the forecasted budgeted figures that you have created for the forthcoming year, you can head up here to November 2024 and click Save Forecast as a Budget. This means that you can save the forecast you've created as your company's budget, as we just saw in company settings. So you would select the forecast that it's pulling from, and then you would select the budget date range. So we're budgeting from next month, so December 2024, and we're going to save it for a whole year. So I'm going to put it into December 2025, save as a budget. That has now saved this forecast as my company's budget. So if I head to settings, within the company settings, which we looked at previously, you can see that the source for our budget is now the forecast. By saving it as the budget, it is locked. So it's now locked in. And although the source is the forecast, if that forecast does change, this budget will remain at the point that you saved it. If I head back to the forecast tool, you can also download a copy of your forecast here to Excel as well. So obviously you've got it saved in your settings as I just highlighted, but if you want a hard copy outside of Fathom, you can download it straight here and it will export it to Excel. And then the other kind of key element of this that I wanted to focus on is the fact that you can have your budget, which we've just looked at, saved from your forecast at the point of saving, but you can also have your forecast remaining as a rolling live forecast. So basically what this means that as you progress throughout the coming year, your actuals will keep updating within Fathom. And then basically that means that any value rules that reference prior periods will remain in line and up to date with those coming in actuals. So for example, this one that is looking at actuals from last month and increasing them by 2%. As you move throughout the coming year, those figures will keep updating in line with the actuals that are coming in. This means that you can see how you kind of are progressing through the year and your figures will remain more relevant to you. So for example, if your costs are they're increasing a lot higher than you'd expected, this would be reflected in those forecast figures. It also means that you can come into your forecast and actually make edits yourself. So for example, if, again, I'm going to focus on costs. For example, maybe they are increasing a lot more than you expected. You could come in and put in a percentage increase or a pound increase, create rule, and then see what that's going to give you for the rest of the period. As you come in and make these edits to help your forecast remain more relevant, you could also overwrite the budget as well. So if you do start doing regular budget reviews, maybe halfway through the year, your costs have raised a lot higher than you'd expected and it's throwing out your budget. It's no longer useful because you're far exceeding it in terms of cost and is expecting your gross profit, etc., etc. You can come in here and overwrite your budget. So maybe you'd like to re-budget halfway through the year, and you can do that by using your rolling live forecast and saving it as your new company's budget. Within Fathom, there are also several other tools that you can use to help you with this forecasting and budgeting process, especially with the idea of keeping your forecast agile as well. So there is the business roadmap, the micro forecast, and the scenarios. So these are all ways to forecast out business like planning and future scenarios and business events as well. I'm not going to go through them today as my colleague Josh covered them last month in a webinar, but you can find lots of information in our help centre and also on our website if you'd like more information about those. Great. And then one of the last things I just wanted to highlight while I'm actually in the forecast tool is the auditability which Fathom gives you as well. So as I mentioned, you've got the notes which you can add onto value rules, and this can be carried through to a report. This means that if there's multiple people working on the forecast, they can see how these decisions were reached, and it reduces risks of a bottleneck within your company. And you can also download a value audit report, which basically gives you a complete audit of how the forecast is set up, all of the value rules, timing profiles, etc. So you can be really transparent about how these figures were reached, and you can share that either with the team or with your client if you're using Fathom as an accounting practice. Great. So I'm going to go ahead now and look at the reports tool in Fathom, as that's the kind of third key main area I wanted to focus on. So to do so, I'm going to actually jump into a company source from a different data source. So I'm going to look at this Xero company. So I'm just going to head to company settings first, just to kind of locate us. So here we have, again, the first main section of company settings. So you can see that the financials here are pulling from Xero. So Fathom's fully integrated with Xero. And then we've also actually got a budget coming in from Xero. So if you do have budgets in an external accounting software, which Fathom's integrated with, so Xero, QuickBooks or MyOb, you can bring that through to Fathom. And you can also bring through, if you have budgets for tracking categories or divisions or locations, as they're sometimes known, you can bring those into Fathom from Xero and QuickBooks as well. I'm not going to cover that today, but just so you're aware that functionality is there. So once those budgets are in Fathom, so for example, in this case, I've got the Xero budget pulled through to Fathom. And again, like we just covered, this can be sourced from Fathom's forecast tool as your budget if you're going to use that to build out your budgets. You can then report on it very easily. So I'm going to go ahead and just jump into that in a moment. I just wanted to show you one quick thing in the company settings as well. So within Fathom, there's lots of capability around KPI tracking. So this is basically tracking key performance indicators for your company. So Fathom comes with a list of lots of default KPIs that you may want to track, which you can tick on or off. But you can also create custom KPIs as well, which I won't be covering today, but just so you're aware that functionality is there. With these KPIs, if I head to the target section, you can also create targets to help you track your performance against these KPIs. And the thing that I wanted to highlight is that you can use your budgets whichever budget you have in your step 1 or your update data of company settings, you can use that budget to set targets against these KPIs as long as the KPIs derived from financial data. So in this case, for example, I can tick here for the gross profit margin target to be using the budget that I have for this company, and you can see it's updated those figures. So I'm going to show you how that pulls through to reports in a moment. And so I'm going to go ahead and jump to the report section. As I mentioned, everything in Fathom is fully interlinked. So anything you do in forecasting, you can pull through to your reports very easily. So I'm going to head to the publish report section and basically show you a finished report, just so you get a sense of what can be produced within Fathom. So if I click on the view here, this is Fathom's online report viewer. So this is how a Fathom report looks when you view it actually online within Fathom. As I scroll through, you can see I've got some commentary which I've written, and then these are key numbers. So this is a way that you can pull out numbers from the body of your report and really highlight them. You can edit which metrics you look at here as well. And you can see I've also got a comparative versus the company's budget here, for example, as well. And then just moving through, just giving you an idea of how visually the reports in Fathom look. Another thing I just wanted to highlight with the online report viewer is the option that you can leave comments on the report elements within Fathom. So if you do choose to invite users into Fathom, so whether that be other team members, stakeholders, or clients, you can give them user permissions either as just a viewer, or if you want to give them some editing rights, you can. And then they can come in and leave comments on individual report elements. So this can be a great way to open up a dialogue, again, like I mentioned, with stakeholders or with clients if you are using these reports as an accounting sync practice. You'll be notified once a user leaves a comment on your report as well. Great. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and click edit, because I want to dig into how easy it is to update and edit Fathom reports. So I've now jumped straight into the report editor in Fathom, and down the side here are the components which you can bring in. So the first one is text, then there's charts, and then finally tables and financials. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in a chart. So here we've got revenue. So I'm going to click edit on the chart and then go to add or remove variables. And I'm just going to press deselect all to give myself a blank chart. Then I'm going to head to the profit and loss, and I'm going to bring in that revenue line. So you can see here, I've got revenue up to, in this case, this is a report for September. And then we've got the end of the year here. So it's looking at the calendar year, the current financial year, which for this company is the calendar year. You can update the period you're looking at very easily. So if you wanted to do a custom period, you can. And then you can also very easily bring in the budget. So if I click the 3 dots here, you can tick this budget, and then it brings in the budgeted figures as you've uploaded them across the period that you've selected. If I scroll down, you can bring in a legend as well, and you can tick off the data labels if you don't want them to show on the chart. In the online viewer, you can hover over to bring up those figures like so. So you can see here that we've got our revenue, and then we've got our budgeted figures, and that's pulling from whatever is in company settings as your budget. Another nice thing that you can do if you tick the 3 dots and go to advanced settings is you can actually bring in that forecast that you've created as well. So here I've got basically 3 sets of figures. I've got revenue in the solid line. I've got the forecast figures extending into the future with the dotted line. And then with the light blue line, I've got our budgeted figures. In the case of this company, you can see that they are pulling far away in terms of their budgeted revenue figures. So probably wouldn't do this now since you're nearing the end of the year, but maybe back in April, it might have been a good idea to sort of re-budget more in line with the forecasted figures, which are closer to the performance which they're seeing, for example. Great. So, and then I'm just going to pull in another chart just to show you how easily you can update these charts to anything that you want to track. So if I go to add or remove variables again, and deselect all down the bottom, just have a blank chart. You can see you can bring in any variable from your whole chart of accounts, and then also any of the KPIs as well, which either you've created or the Fathom default KPIs. So I'm going to bring in the gross profit margin, which we link to our budget in company settings. So I've got the percentage gross profit margin coming in here. And then if I tick the 3 dots, I can bring through that target figure. So as you remember, we linked our target to our budget. So this allows us to, throughout the year, we can use this chart to track how we're performing against these key performance indicators. And we can link our target to our budget to keep us on top of our performance as well and help with the tracking of the performance of these key KPIs. And you can obviously just overwrite the title as well as needed. Great. So yeah, I just wanted to show you the ease of updating these charts and making use of your budget to really like maximize your budget throughout the period. And you can also update these charts super easy to any format you like. And like I mentioned, you can update the date range really easily as well. And you can also update the frequency of the results. If you want to look on a bigger picture yearly, you can do that here as well. And then just to show you one other element, which I think is really cool within Fathom reports, it is the breakdown tool. So I'm just going to bring in this one here that says revenue breakdown by account and hit edit. So if, for example, you want to dig into, maybe you want to dig into costs for the company, maybe costs are rising throughout the year and you want to get on top of, what is the breakdown of our costs as a company, you can bring in this breakdown visual, update it to any account classification. And then the other thing that you can do is compare it with your budget as well. So I can just tick compare with budget, and you can see here we've got a breakdown of our different cost of sales from our chart of accounts versus budget for this period, which is September, which we're at now. So once you've got these visuals in a report template, you can keep using them for future periods. So maybe cost of sales is something that we really want to keep an eye on, and we really want to keep it as close as possible to our budget throughout the year. So we're trying to really focus in on that. So you can have this front and center of a report, and it's a really useful, clear visual element to help with that as well. So obviously there's lots that you can do in Fathom reports. I'm not going to go through all the elements that you can bring into reports, but if you do have Fathom currently or you want to take out a trial, it's a great idea to come in here and just click around and have a play with these elements, which you can easily bring into your reports. The last thing I wanted to focus on is Fathom's financial capability. So I'll just click the top one here, and that brings in a profit and loss. So if you want to dig into the figures that are making up the charts, you can easily bring in a financial table, and you can update if you're looking at P&L, balance sheet, cash flow, for example, and then you can easily bring in extra columns as well. So again, we can bring in the budget for this period, and you can easily do variances versus your budget as well. And then you can also show forecasted, like how your forecast is expecting to perform over the course of the year, and year-to-date actual figures as well. Like so. So yeah, there's lots of capability within the financial tables. If you are looking to show the kind of monthly breakdown or a quarterly breakdown, you can use our financial trends table as well, which is here. And I'm not going to bring that in, but just so you know, there's that capability as well. So once you've created the reports that you're happy with, if I go back to the main report center, you can click the 3 dots here, and then you can save that report as a template. So I can give that a name, for example, this one, create template. And then that moves that into the template section of reports for this company. That means that for future periods, so coming months, you can come in here and generate a report straight away from this template. This will help you improving your budgeting process as you move throughout the coming year, making sure that you remain, you keep regularly checking the performance of your business versus your budget, and therefore seeing more of the usefulness in creating these budgets and making sure, like I mentioned, that you keep on top of altering them and editing them to make sure that they remain useful. It also means that you can share these reports with other companies as well. So if you're a company that's part of a consolidated group, you could easily share this report template to another company in your consolidated group. And then you can all be comparing against the same kind of metrics and looking at the same key areas of your business. Or if you're an accounting practice, it also means you can share it across clients. Once that report has been shared, you can then go ahead and edit it as well. So if you wanted to make the report more bespoke, you can, but you can use it as a starting point. Fathom also has predefined templates as well, which you can start from. So that's another way that it can help you save time, because you won't be starting from a blank canvas, and it can maybe get the cogs turning about what you can include and utilize with your budget as well. Great. So yeah, so that's the key main areas that I wanted to focus on within Fathom, and hopefully ways that it can improve your budgeting process. So I'm going to go ahead and jump back to the slideshow just to finish up. Okay, great. So yeah, so we've looked at all of those elements which I've gone through in the product demonstration. And like I said, hopefully we've looked at some of the ways that you can improve your budgeting process using Fathom Smart Forecasting tool. And hopefully this can help you build a more useful reporting output, which is more scalable as well, and hopefully save you time in the future. So I'm going to go through some questions that people sent in to us via the registration link for this video. So the first one that I'm going to answer is, can you consolidate budgets in Fathom? So the answer is yes. If you have a budget saved in the company settings of the underlying entities in that consolidation, when you add them to a consolidated group, it will also roll those budgets up to the consolidated group and consolidate them. The next question is, can you have multiple budgets per company? At the moment, you can only have the one budget, which I showed you in company settings. You can, however, within Fathom's forecasting tool, have unlimited scenarios. So if you are using that forecasting tool, you can have unlimited scenarios, and you can pull those through to reports as well. And you can also import budgets for tracking categories or divisions for Xero and QuickBook companies as well. How often is financial data updated in Fathom? So financial data in Fathom is updated depending on if your financial data is coming from a source accounting system such as Xero, QuickBooks, MYOB, then it can be updated daily automatically just by turning that on in company settings. So that will come through every 24 hours. But you can also just push through an update at any time by heading to company settings. If your data is sourced from Excel, you'll just need to upload your new data, which you can do in company settings as well. And then finally, can you compare actuals versus budget versus forecast figures for the same period? So as you might remember in the report element, I showed you a graph which had budgets and actuals and then forecasts extending into the future. So you can have the three sets of figures, but currently you can't compare them for the same period. We are looking at extending out that capability. It is a question that comes through fairly often, but at the moment you can compare your actuals versus budget, and then you can have the forecast extending into the future. Great. So yeah, hopefully that was useful. If you do have any questions, please do feel free to get in touch with our support team, which their email address is on the screen. If you're a current customer, you can also reach out to your account manager or the support team via the Fathom chat as well when you're actually in the product. And then if you haven't used Fathom before and you'd like to take out a trial, you can head to our website, which is on the screen, and you can take out a 14-day trial as well, and we'll be more than happy to help. So yeah, please do get in touch if you've got any questions and we can help you with those. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Hopefully, as I mentioned, hopefully it was useful, and please do get in touch if you've got any queries.